It's so good to have you back on my channel, and I'll show you how to sew this collar dress or the shirt dress. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe and ensure to tap the notification bell to get notified once I post a new video. And also ensure you watch this video to the end, as I'll be giving you lots and lots of tips. Let's get started. In my previous video, we drafted the collar pattern and made this collar, and I also showed you a video of how to draft the shirt dress bodies, which I have cut out here already from my pattern. Okay, so all I did was to add 1.5 inches seam allowance to the sides. You can add ½ inch or 1, and also if you would like a little ease or you don't want it to be fitted firmly on your body, you can add a little ease to the sides while cutting on the fabric. It's up to you. So I also added 1 inch hemming allowance to the hem of these bodies. So that's the front bodies. I cut 2 pieces of it, and this is the back bodies I cut on fold. Okay, so this is what your back bodies will look like after cutting it. Then also add your 1.5 or 1 inch seam allowance to the sides, as well as the hem of the bodies. Now I also went ahead to cut a yoke for my shirt dress. This yoke I just measured 10 inches from the neckline or the top of the shoulder line to this point, and I just made a little curve by the sides. It's your opportunity to play with the yoke. You can make it a straight yoke, you can make it slanted or even curved, depends on the kind of yoke you want. So it's just very simple, and it's cut out from the back body. So you just trace it out, measure 10 inches from the shoulder line downwards, and make the shape you want. You can even make it shorter than 10 inches. It's up to you. So for the sleeve, I've also cut out the sleeve for the dress. So now we'll have to be sewing them. So I've fused my interfacing on the yoke of the back body. So you just place it on the back bodies like so and sew this point. First step in sewing this dress is to sew up the bottom allowance. Remember the 3 inches we added in front of the bodies for the bottom and buttonhole allowance. We're going to be folding them up now to create our buttons and buttonholes allowance. Now what we're going to do is, from the point we measured the 3 inch, that's the point where the neckline stops, okay, before the button allowance, we're going to make a notch there, which I have just done now. Okay, and I also made a notch at the end of it, that's at the bottom before the 3 inches. Now once you've done that, you need to measure 1 inch from that point to the buttonhole allowance. So measure 1 inch from this point to that side. Okay, then you're going to fold from that point. Now you fold it in. Okay, so you're going to fold from the 1 inch I measured that way. Then on the bottom as well, we'll have to measure 1 inch. Okay, this will serve as the 1 inch extension added to the collar. Do you remember that 1 inch? Yes, so that's what we are extending at this point, so that by the time you fix the collar, it will fit perfectly to these bodies. Okay, so we'll just fold at that point where we measured 1 inch. Now that 1 inch allowance will also be the point where the bottom allowance overlaps on each other in front. Okay, so now once you folded that, you now decide whether you want to further fold the remaining part into 2 like so and iron it down, or you can leave it that way and overlock the edge if you're using a fabric that would fray. Okay, depends on the kind of edge you have here. Now you can leave it that way. If you're working with a light fabric, you need to add interfacing on this part, okay, and before ironing it down. So now what I'll do here is to fold by 1 inch from that edge, okay, then fold again by another 1 inch, leaving the first 1 inch from the notch. Okay, so now we have that other 1 inch relaxed. Okay, so that's what I've done here. Now I need to make my straight stitch. I will sew on these 2 points. I will sew on this end and on the other end, since I'm folding it. But if you're not folding it, if you're leaving it this way, you can just decide to make a top stitch on this end, then use your interfacing and hemming tape to hold it in place to the bodies. Okay, whichever way works out for you, they are both fine and would go very well with the buttonholes. So I've ironed the yoke using my 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so I've ironed it that way. You can use 1/2 inch if you want. Okay, and so that's the yoke, and I'm going to attach it to the back bodies now. First, you have to pin it in place before sewing. Once you've sewn the yoke to the back bodies, like I've done, you will now need to sew the shoulders. That's, you're going to place the front shoulder line on the back one and align them properly. So I'm placing the 2 shoulders on the back bodies. Now I'm going to be sewing on this part. So we're not going to be sewing it the way it is. So we'll just place these front bodies on the yoke pattern. Okay, then we'll now take the main bodies, the main back bodies, which is sewn to the yoke. We're going to align it on the neckline like so. So this is my front bodies, this is the yoke pattern, and this is the main back bodies. Now we'll place them like so. Then we're going to pick the main back bodies and twist it around. So we'll turn it the other way around like so, and place on the shoulders like so. So we're going to be sewing it like this, so that by the time we sew it and turn it around, we'll have concealed seam line. So we're going to do this on the 2 shoulders.
Once you've sewn the shoulders, you go ahead to make some notches on the shoulder line at the midpoint and the center back and shoulders. Align the collar properly after making notches on the collar as well. Then begin to sew from the button allowance all the way to the center back and back to the button allowance on the other side. Then ensure to secure your stitches with your back stitch. Once you get to the button allowance, flip your collar over to the other side and ensure to make your top stitch and align it properly from the part you ironed, and pin them in place at the center back on the shoulders as well as the front button allowance. Trim out the excess fabric on the part you folded, align them neatly on your sewing machine and begin to sew from the button allowance in front all the way to your center back and back to your button allowance on the other side, ensuring your stitches are straight and as neat as you can have them. Then cut out your thread and it's time to attach your sleeves. To attach the sleeves, you have to align the armholes on the point you cut. It has to fall at the front. Remember the 1.5 inch you added on the shoulder line, it falls in front on shirts unlike other dresses. So you pin your sleeves above the 1.5 inches and start sewing from your front to the shoulders and to the other part of the armhole, securing your stitch at the end of the seam. And on the other sleeve as well, you align your sleeves, pin them in place and begin to sew, ensuring a clean straight stitch. ensure to backstitch. Once you get there, then it's time to sew the side seams. Once you've attached your sleeves, you begin to sew from the 1.5 inch seam allowance you added on the side. If you added some ease, it's time to measure out your seams. Ensure you measure the bicep, the sleeves, and all the way to the armhole and to the sides, ensuring your stitches are straight and as clean as you can make them. Once you get to the hem, you move over to the other side and make your side seams. Then it's time to hem your dress. There are two ways you can hem this dress. You either fold twice, as I'm doing here, and sew from the button allowance all the way round to the other side, or you overlock the edges and sew from the buttonhole to the other side while on fold. Just a single fold will do if you have overlocked it. Okay, it comes out actually neat, but if you can do what I'm doing, then follow this pattern and sew it to the other side. Okay, so yes, we have our dress almost done. Now the next thing to do is to attach our buttons as well as the buttonholes. On my sewing machine, I have three functions here, which is the buttonhole functions. That's the left, the middle, and the other side. So once you adjust it properly, you're good to fix your buttonholes. Okay, so that will be a video for another day. So for a lady's dress, the buttonholes will be on the right pattern while the buttons will be on the left, so that the right overlaps on the left. So before fixing up your buttons and making the buttonholes, you need to measure from the collar stand 4 inches and mark them appropriately, so that from the first 4 inches to the next one will be this gap between your two buttons and the buttonholes. Okay, so that will be the space for the buttons. So once you've measured and marked that, it's time to sew up your buttons and your buttonholes. Okay, so with this, we've come to the end of this video, and I hope you found it interesting and helpful. Yes, I know it was interesting, and I know you've subscribed. If you've not, please do that now and ensure to tap the notification bell, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.